Welcome to the Revenue Rewired podcast, hosted by StringCan Interactive's visionary CEO, Jay Feitlinger, and no-nonsense COO, Sarah Shepard. We're here to accelerate your revenue and give your marketing purpose. All right, hello and welcome everybody to this fresh episode of the Revenue Rewired podcast. Hi, Jay.
How's it going, Sarah?
So
Miss you.
good. I know we miss you too. We've been having like some record high weather, so I'm sure you're not sad, but I'm loving it.
I heard it was in like low 90s in Arizona.
Yeah, there were some heat wave watches for people, and my landlady was telling me to please make sure I'm watering the plants regularly. So I was like,
I
oh,
love that.
she knows my history apparently. All right.
Hysterical. Well, I'm
Well,
calling
to
in from Europe, from Italy.
yes, you are. And so you were on a boat for a really long time. Like how many hours have you spent on a boat in the last week?
Well, I did my first ever river boat cruise. So I would say half the day for the week. And then I guess I'm a glutton for punishments. I met my wife in Rome the other day, and I'm like, let's try one of these overnight train rides to get into Sicily, which requires you to have your train go on an actually ferry ride, which was definitely a unique experience of watching your train unbuild itself onto a boat and then riding on a boat to get to Sicily. So I think I'm done with boats for a bit, but it's definitely been a few hours.
I think I'm gonna have to watch that on YouTube because you weren't able to see it, and I'm just so
Yes,
curious. Like engineering like that is so fascinating.
it was amazing.
That's so cool. Well, we miss you, and I'm glad I get to catch up with you here to talk about some really fun stuff, which we hope you guys enjoy this one. This one's come to us quite a bit, either tangentially or directly from prospects and current clients. And it's why your search traffic has tanked and why it actually is not your marketing team's fault. And this one has a lot of factors, but Jay, could we, and I know this for my own benefit would be helpful. The origin of search marketing. I was actually joking with someone the other day that I'm like aging myself by saying, I remember Ask Jeeves. And I feel
Oh my
like it's that
goodness.
moment. Like, I just will never forget how powerful I felt. And I think I had to have been a teenager, maybe, or I know I was doing something for school, and my parents bought the old encyclopedia ROM, CD-ROMs, and it was such a pain to look stuff up, and it was just old. And then Ask Jeeves came out. And I'm like, this is cool. Do we have any more of those AOL free minute CDs that we could pop in? I can scour the
Oh,
internet.
they were great coasters for me when I was growing up or in
Oh my
college or whatever it
God.
was.
But like, and I'm sure there's other pieces like AI is not new. People have been working on this technology for decades. It's new to us because it's now public facing, but search marketing, I'm sure, has a public facing side, which, you've been in the industry a bit. What was search marketing like when you kind of first started using it at StringCan?
Wow. Well, I mean, it was even way before SpringCan. I mean, I've been involved in internet marketing since the late 90s. I remember building my first website that it was like back then the cool thing was having animated GIFs all over your site. The more animated GIFs you had bopping around, the cooler your site was. And again, even Google, like I remember when it first came out, and it was similar like when Facebook launched, like the initial experience was obviously quite different than the one we have today. But I remember like, back in like, the I don't know, like 2003 or something like that. I got one of my first search engine, optimization projects. And what was crazy back then is, I've always lived my life from an ethical point of view. And it was a really kind of a slippery slope. Once you had a bunch of marketers, they wouldn't really call themselves marketers. They're more like, in my opinion, scammers sometimes. You just kind of figure out how to, reverse the algorithm with Google, for example, And if you could figure out how to, get your site to show up, those were the ones that won and got the traffic. And if you can imagine, it got really messy fast with like keyword stuffing, and then people will do, scandalous things like build websites, and the bottom half of the page would be, white font on white background, so the users weren't like, "What is this garbage?" Keyword stuffing content. But back in the day, it worked, and I think Google, got really sophisticated on penalizing people. They call them like, black hat SEO people, um, on basically, not presenting things in a more ethical way. And obviously, that SEO world evolved so much over the last probably 20 years. But then when, AI came out, that completely changed the game.
Yeah, and I think SEO has this understanding but not understanding, and even for some marketers who don't specialize in it, it's still sort of this ethereal and unclear and like chicken bone type of tactic, but it's showing its true colors and when it's done right and when it's not done right. Just like anything else, like building a house, you can tell when it's done right and it's not done well at all, and the consequences of that are kind of showing themselves. And I was joking with one of our teammates that I think someone in the SEO space rebranded SEO, and that's what AI is doing, is rebranding SEO. So we've
Hmm.
got AEO, GEO. But the other thing that really shook marketers up, I'd say like the next evolution after that was zero click searches. And what that means, and it's kind of inconspicuous, I think, to a lot of users. The UX of it is kind of fabulous, and a lot of you have seen it. So if you've searched for something and Google has provided you the answer right away, that means it's a zero click response. You do not have to click to get the response. And so, Jay, I know that has been a long time in the making, and I'm not quite familiar with the details of when that first rolled out. What were the responses from like clients and prospects when that hit, and how did that affect search traffic?
Well, I think what's interesting is, the challenge is, a lot of organizations look at various marketing tactics as their own kind of islands. And there's multiple reports that I've seen on companies, marketing dashboards where like SEO's own section. It's like how much traffic did we get? What is the rankings of our keywords? Like all of this stuff. And it's interesting. I noticed probably about 2 years or so ago when the one click, not only with like ChatGPT, for example, but also with Google itself, people were not connecting the dots between seeing a huge drop off in their SEO traffic. And a lot of clients would come to me, for example, and be like, is there a concern in our industry? Are people not searching for us as much because we're seeing a 5, 10, 20, 30% drop off in our organic search traffic? And of course, we can all go down this crazy rabbit hole of like, well, is that a possible variable or not? But once we got the marketing reporting to be more sophisticated, and we're able to track, visibility and not just the clicks, and then once AI got more and more popular and more mainstream, where people started using it to do their own searching, that's where obviously the traffic was going. I think that's where I think a lot of companies are struggling now is the lack of visibility of, if people are going on to, let's say, Google and just typing in, a long tail phrase, and then Google's providing the answer right there and not even giving you a click, then all of a sudden, that brand is not seeing that connection between that prospective customer, and their business. And so now all of a sudden they worry about their market. But now that we're able to start doing really smart stuff around tracking how many people are clicking through from like, hey, ChatGPT, can you tell me who the a great B2B marketing firm is in Arizona? And then we pop up. When people click that, source link and it goes to our site, we can start seeing traffic coming in that way. But that is not considered organic traffic. That's referral traffic. And so it's really interesting how, this I think is honestly a positive thing where it's forcing companies to think more holistically. around, end of the day, all we should care about is growing our business. And then you want to dive it down into detail regarding which tactic is actually helping generate those opportunities. I think if you look at it more holistically, you won't be as concerned that search is dead, because it's not. It just has completely evolved regarding how consumers are searching for answers to their business or personal needs.
Well, and consumers' needs have evolved too, where there didn't used to be as much choice and option, and it was kind of like whoever really owned the digital game was the one who showed up, and you were like, well, they have more information that's available, so I feel like I can make a more informed choice. And now that's not really the game anymore. The game is how much time do I have to spend getting my specific answer? And to your point about am I showing up, we have a client and they have for a while struggled with a lot of the doctors. So they're a very competitive eye care and LASIK center. But they have a lot of doctors saying, hey, are we showing up? And I don't see us. And we've also had that with another past client in the B2B space as well. And part of that was, changing search to work for them. And what we did, while you and I had talked about some of these metrics before, there's still indicators. Like we're not saying that some of the metrics you might be tracking are total trash, like impressions or organic clicks, but it is an indicator of something else. So if your bottom line results are not changing, but your metrics are, then something is broken and you need to follow that trail. But with the changes that we made by implementing a pretty detailed SEO, AEO, GEO combined program for them, they went up 171% in their impressions in a matter of a few months with over 3,000 high intent conversions, meaning, we're getting further down the chain of these people finding this business and saying, this is matching my intention for my search. And, it is a lot of hard work. It is a lot of the stuff that you might not be aware of managing on the back end. Like, even I searched for us on Claude and it found a location from our business that's been closed for many years. And I thought, wow, that was really going back into the archives there. But it's quite thorough. And so you might be missing out on some opportunities by just maybe not having done a little bit of business hygiene. And so I think that's part of the process here is maybe pausing because there's just so much noise. And instead of trying to adjust everything or, get back and fix all of your location listings and following every single little tactic and suggestion like we have heard and a lot of people can't verify this. Like for example, Bing search, having your Bing local listings updated can improve your search in ChatGPT because
Hmm.
ChatGPT is using Microsoft. Well, I haven't found anyone that can fully verify that. They're like, sounds nice, makes sense logically, but they're not gonna share that. So I think there are a couple things we wanted to make sure people hear from us. Um, and so one of those is like impressions without clicks is the new normal. That's been around for a while, but it's not just a ranking game anymore, which is hard because I know like you as a competitive person, if I'm not ranking, what am I doing? What do you think about that
Yeah.
one?
No, I love it. I think again, you're bringing up some really, really good points here. My brain has been very wired SEO kind of mindset for so many years now that for me it comes very natural to think about, like you mentioned, like the Bing and ChatGPT connection. Again, back in the day, they called the crawlers for the search engines, as the system to be figuring out, where all these sites are out there and which ones should rank. And so this whole kind of like spider web concept became a very common, mindset in the search game. And so to me, it always was like, it's very amazing to see how if you do something here, it can impact there. And I know a lot of clients, back to the point, is we get calls all the time where they're just so worried about, to your point, on like, we're not being found for this phrase anymore. What's going on? And I think, we become like almost like a business therapist at that point in time, where I think, we understand the concern that they worry that if one of their marketing tactics that was performing really well yet last year and this year is not performing as well, they get really worried about their business is going to have a major drop. And I think for us, we look at it from a very holistic and pragmatic point of view and don't get all emotional and do a really proper diagnosis of like what is going on. And I think to your point, that's really where I think a lot of companies need to start is like before you start again to your back to the beginning of this show, before you start blaming marketing that they're doing a bad job and not, leveraging all the trickery around SEO. I think we take a step back and like hire a firm like us or you guys do this yourselves and do a proper diagnosis of your whole marketing world. I think you might find that potentially there's some really big opportunities elsewhere to help you get those leads. But I think the impressions comment you made just now is really smart because you want to make sure that you're showing up based upon how consumers are searching now. Which is very different today than it was a few years ago.
And we all know getting some of that traffic is how you get the data to then further refine it and find out where people are dropping off and losing interest, or they're getting really excited and clicking and making a purchase. And as Matt and I talked about in last week's episode, the amount of touches required for someone to have enough confidence to choose you as their next partner service product is increasing ever more. And so the easier you can make it for a user, the better it is for everyone in the long run. You want to be easy to work with. And then in that sense, you need to be easy to find and buy from. And I do want to say also the second piece we want to offer is that the game is not a game, but SEO, AEO, and GEO, while we could go into it as a whole nother topic, the slight difference here, SEO is SEO, search engine optimization. A lot of people know what that is, but the difference between AEO and GEO is AEO is citing you, but GEO, generative engine optimization, is showing you as the answer. And so it's a very nuanced difference, but being cited isn't seen as confident as it is being shown as the answer. And that's kind of where that zero click is. A lot of people are being drawn into that as like, this is the answer. I'm the internet. I have way more resources than you do. And I'm showing you this is the answer. And so getting into making sure your SEO backbone is still super strong is the one way in which you can start showing up in the right places and getting recommended as the response and the answer.
Yeah, and if I can add one more comment to that, again, back to that whole diagnostic comment I made earlier, what you're saying right now, the really cool thing that I'm noticing, I'm not sure, Sarah, if you're seeing this as well, but I have to say, one of the things that I'm noticing is happening a lot of last year is the feedback we're getting from our clients is the quality of the leads are so much better because the clients are coming in, or prospective clients are coming in so much more knowledgeable. And some of our clients are in very sophisticated, confusing industries, and it's hard to, get into these sales calls, and you don't want to feel intimidated because they have all this industry speak when you get on these calls. But what we were hearing from our clients is the last year or so is that the people they're talking to are already coming in so pre-qualified because they have all the research they've been done. And in the old model, clients would try to leverage their website to help educate the buyers. But the problem is then you have such a text heavy or a ton of videos on your site, it just overwhelms people. But I think right now consumers on the business B2B side and the B2C side are, doing their research on, ChatGPT, Gemini, et cetera. And when they're contacting prospective companies, they're coming in again so much more aware of what the offering would look like. So obviously, it's not only benefiting the company, but also significantly speeding up the sales process. And that's why I love the idea of doing a diagnostic first, because you might find that yes, you might be again dropping in one area, but when you're looking at holistically, like you mentioned with SEO and AEO and GEO stuff, and looking at the whole entire picture, as long as you're having the right conversation with the right potential clients, and your business is going to be, hitting the goals you're looking for, again, I wouldn't, point fingers at the marketing team for search going down because other tactics are helping making up the gap.
Hmm. Yeah, and part of this is it's really I think it's hard to do this work yourself because you're so close to it, and so you're not searching because you don't feel that pain. And that's where, I will put that a third party can be beneficial because sometimes it's a little easier for them to think about the pain. You've been, as the client, solving it for so long that you might not be using the new terminology that someone's using to solve their pain. Um, and that's why autofill is so intriguing to me. Sometimes the response, I'm like, this is such a random question, and it shows up as like the second result. And I'm thinking, wow, I am not the only one having this crazy weird question. And so some of that is user behavior and we are probably in some cases human behavior scientists. I think actually you used to call us that in our like old employee manual. We were like marketing
Hmm.
scientists.
Good memory.
But
Wow.
I just remember thinking that was really strange. But the more I'm in this business, the more I understand that. And I'd say that if we're going to offer one takeaway, which is really a very simple one, it's go deep dive into each LLM and just ask them a simple question like, explain my business. I've done that for both of us doing biographies, and it was absolutely mind-boggling the stuff it found out of nowhere. Something that I 100% have thought, but I had no idea I verbalized that somewhere. It pulled out this little blurb about me that I was like, I don't remember telling anyone that or sharing that, but it's true. And it wasn't bad, but I was like, gosh, where did that come from? So it'd be interesting. Just start there. Like, if you're overwhelmed by this whole conversation and what all this means for your business, just do a search. Like, tell me about my business and just see what it says. And if you agree or disagree, and go from there.
I love that. I think that's a really, really good first step. That's smart.
All right. Well, anything else to add, Jay, before we let you back into the evening?
Well, I guess just to kind of wrap it up is again, I love that we're having this conversation, because, again, I just, um, when people are just, they have such tunnel vision, and they just start thinking the sky is falling. I think, again, luckily for us, we work with so many different organizations of companies, industries, and sizes, that we can look at things from, again, a non-emotional point of view. I think if you should take a step back and just really have some good, meaningful conversations with your team about starting with, how many leads are we getting this month versus, 2 years ago, the same time frame, and then what is the quality, what are the conversations, what are the objections, what are the questions, all the things going on, and then working backwards from there. But I loved your comment about the LLM because I think the once you have the visibility into how you're showing up or not showing up, in all these various different channels, I think that's half the battle. Is just knowing where you have the opportunities. And so again, before you just start blaming one tactic, I think you might see some big opportunities here where you kind of zig when everyone else is zagging. I guess why I love this game is it's so fun that it's constantly evolving. And I think as long as you're being innovative and evolving with it, I think you have some big opportunities here. So again, so before you get upset about something, just take a step back and do the proper diagnostic work. I think you'll be really happy to see the opportunities.
I couldn't agree more. All right.
Love
Well,
it.
that's it for today's episode. And if you guys have any questions about what any of this means, or we are creating reports for clients now that are showing the results of all these LLM searches, which is also evolving. We're so happy to be able to provide this data now, as of last July, actually. So it's fairly newish. But email us at podcast@StringCan Interactive. We're always happy to help. All right. Well, thanks, Jay. We hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Revenue Rewired podcast. Send us your questions to podcast@stringcaninteractive.com and follow us for more insights to drive your business forward.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Bye.